Welcome to today's webinar, CARES Act Recovery Assistance, an overview of economic development and administration aid programs, hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning in association with the Smart Growth Network. My name is Michael Bayer. I'm the Manager of Infrastructure and Development at the Maryland Department of Planning and Project Manager for the Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse. The Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse is a project of the Smart Growth Network, which is supported by the U.S. EPA's Office of Community Revitalization and is managed by the Maryland Department of Planning. In addition to hosting webinars, the Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse has a website, smartgrowth.org, that provides current information on effective growth, development, and preservation practices. The website provides news and information about events, funding opportunities, awards, and resources to help local decision makers foster healthy, resilient, and economically vibrant communities. The Clearinghouse is also the virtual home of the Smart Growth Network, a nationally recognized coalition of leadership organizations that have formally endorsed the principles of smart growth. This webinar is one in a series of webinars produced by the Maryland Department of Planning on smart growth and planning topics available for viewing at smartgrowth.org. Today's program debuts Planning with Purpose, a Smart Growth Network webinar series on community revitalization. The Maryland Department of Planning is working with the Smart Growth Network to host a series of programs through the rest of the year, examining how smart growth strategies can help to mitigate current issues and provide opportunities for smart growth advocates to learn from their counterparts in adjacent fields. We are recording this webinar and will post it on our website early next week under the Webinar Archives tab. We encourage you to visit the website and subscribe to our e-newsletter to get smart growth news and information and to learn about our upcoming webinars. You can also learn about planning initiatives, planning tools, and educational opportunities in Maryland by visiting the Maryland Department of Planning's website at planning.maryland.gov. The views expressed by the speakers in this webinar are those of the speaker and not necessarily of the Maryland Department of Planning or the state of Maryland. Viewers of this live event are eligible to receive 1.5 CM credits from the American Planning Association. To log your AICP credits, visit the American Planning Association's website at planning.org, log into your account, and search for the name of today's event, which is CARES Act Recovery Assistance, an overview of economic development administration aid programs. You can also search for event number 920-2316. So to get started, our speakers today are Dennis Alvord, Joel Frushone, and Linda Cruz-Carnall. Dennis Alvord serves as EDA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Economic Development and Chief Operating Officer, and is responsible for enterprise-wide operations and program execution. Joel Frushone has served as EDA's Director of the Office of External Affairs and Communications since May of 2019. At EDA, he manages the Public Affairs Department and the Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs Department and leads its Opportunity Zones work. Linda Cruz-Carnall was appointed Regional Director of the Philadelphia Regional Office in December 2015. She leads a staff of economic development professionals who oversee and manage federal economic development funding and outreach for federal regions 1, 2, and 3, which extend from Maine to the Virginias, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Following their presentations, Dennis, Joel, and Linda will answer as many questions as time permits, and they will be joined by Doug Lynott, Director of Economic Development Integration at EDA. You can submit a question anytime during their presentations by using the questions tool in the control panel located on the right side of your screen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis. Welcome, Dennis.
Thanks very much, Michael. Appreciate the kind introduction and the warm welcome. My special thanks to the Maryland Department of Planning and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Community Revitalization for hosting us. Congratulations on the launch of the new Smart Growth webinar series. We're really honored to be among your first guests. And to all the economic development practitioners and community leaders that are on with us today, thank you for the work that you're doing to create economic opportunity in your communities. I want you to know that EDA greatly appreciates the incredible work that all of you do to create economic opportunity across the country. We know that communities and the regions that you represent are really suffering significantly as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and we wish you the very best as you work to address the economic and other impacts from the virus. While these are unquestionably challenging times, hopefully we can be a partner to you in this endeavor. Critically, the CARES Act provided EDA, the Economic Development Administration, with $1.5 billion to help communities prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus and the economic impacts resulting from the pandemic. We're deploying our CARES Act funding as quickly and efficiently and as effectively as we possibly can in a manner that aligns with and meets the diverse needs of the eligible communities and economic development partners that we work with. As the folks working directly in impacted communities and regions, we're committed to helping you do what you do best. By working closely with you, I'm confident that we will get our economy and our great nation back up and running at full throttle quickly and effectively. The role you play is going to be critically important, indeed invaluable to this recovery. I can think of no time in our nation's history where your work will mean more, and I truly commend you for your ongoing efforts. I wanted to take a moment to briefly mention a couple other webinar partners that will be joining us today. I think Michael just mentioned Joel Frushone, the Director of EDA's Office of External Affairs and Communications. Joel's going to be providing an overview of the CARES Act funding available by EDA. We also have Linda Cruz-Carnall, the Director of EDA's Philadelphia Regional Office, who will be bringing a regional perspective. And Doug Lynott, who directs our economic development integration work and can discuss those efforts, is also with us on the webinar here today. We're looking forward to interacting with you and taking your questions following the presentation. So without further ado, let me turn things over to Joel, and we can jump into the substance. Joel?
Thank you, Dennis. Michael, thank you as well. I'd also like to thank the Maryland Department of Planning and the EPA for hosting us today, and thank all of you online for joining us. It's a pleasure to be with you today to discuss EDA's CARES Act recovery assistance work. We've done many of these over the past couple weeks, and it's a real pleasure to share with your audience and other audiences the work that EDA is doing and the partnerships that we have to help the country recover and respond to the coronavirus pandemic. So if we could, let's jump into the next slide, please. Thank you. So the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act, that President Trump signed into law on March 27th, provided EDA with $1.5 billion to help communities prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. And of this funding, EDA has made $1.467 billion available for grant making. Again, that's $1.467 billion. And the remaining funds will support salaries and expenses and oversight activities, as all of our appropriations do. On May 7th, you may be aware that the U.S. Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, announced our CARES Act recovery assistance funding opportunities. Sorry about that. And we began accepting applications immediately from that day. And today we're deploying our CARES Act funding as quickly, effectively, and efficiently as possible, as Dennis mentioned, and in a manner that meets the needs of our communities. In fact, last week we announced nearly $13 million in CARES Act grants, and those went to about 20 states, and we have as many or more lined up this week, and we will continue with that pace in the weeks to come. So next slide, please. Thank you. To offer the maximum flexibility and be responsive to the economic development needs and priorities of our local and regional stakeholders as possible, we're making our CARES Act recovery assistance grants under the authority of our Economic Adjustment Assistance, or EAA program. And many of you are aware of our EAA program. And EDA CARES Act recovery assistance investments will support a wide range of non-construction and construction activities, and you can see them there, including economic recovery planning and preparing technical assistance strategies to address economic dislocations caused by the coronavirus pandemic, preparing or updating resiliency plans to respond to future pandemics, capitalization or recapitalization of revolving loan funds. We do have some in Maryland, and EDA supports about 500 RLF that are managed by operators across the country. Implementing a coronavirus-specific innovation and entrepreneurship challenge. We're looking at that right now, and we should make that available to the public in the coming weeks. If you're familiar with our regional innovation strategies, which is now called Build to Scale, it will look something like that. And also constructing public works and facilities that will support economic recovery, and that includes the deployment of broadband to support telehealth, remote learning for job skills, and other high-impact projects. Next slide, please. So the big question, who is eligible for CARES Act funding? And we've determined that economic injury from the pandemic constitutes a special need. And that means under the EAA program, an eligibility may be established on that basis without reference to other economic distress criteria. So we have a lot of economic distress criteria, but since it's under the special needs category, it means essentially every community in the country is eligible. However, and this is important to remember, applicants must explain clearly in their application how the project would, and I quote, this is in the bill, in the Act, prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus, or respond to economic injury as a result of coronavirus. And we know that's a needle to thread, but communities across the country have suffered severe economic injury, and in an application explaining how this has been done makes you more competitive, and we think that that's easily done because of the widespread impact that the pandemic has had. So since we're administering these funds under the EAA program, like I mentioned, our eligible applicants remain the same, and they include, you can see them there on the screen, district organizations, American Indian tribes or consortium of Indian tribes, states and political subdivisions of states, including counties, cities, special purpose districts, many of you on the phone, institutions of higher education or consortium of institutions of higher education. We support university centers across the country and many in Linda's district or region. She's going to speak about that in a moment, including Maryland, and also public or private nonprofit organizations that are working in association with a political subdivision of the state, like I mentioned. Next slide, please. I'd like to note that EDA has been working with the White House Opportunity Revitalization Council on delivering relief to communities affected by COVID-19. And you may be aware of the council. They were stood up by executive order, put in place by the president a few years ago. The head agency is HUD, and Scott Turner is the executive director. He's a dynamo and a real proponent for opportunity zones. And with our core and disaster supplemental funding, that means every annual appropriation we get from Congress, EDA is also working to ensure that eligible entities in or near opportunity zones both are aware of our CARES Act recovery assistance funding opportunities, and we also expect that our funding opportunities from CARES Act will go to opportunity zones. And to put that into perspective, since FY 2018, EDA has invested nearly $472 million in 353 projects in or near opportunity zones across the country. And two important facts that I love, their stats, that 60% of EDA's investments go to rural areas. And also 65, it's actually 67% of our opportunity zone investments go to projects in or near opportunity zones in rural areas as well. So Maryland's rural partners, please take note of that. We've done even more on the opportunity zone front to make as many projects available and to make sure that we are doing the best we can from the government standpoint to make this opportunity available for folks. So in 2018, we made opportunity zones eligible for funding from any notice of funding opportunity or NOFO that we issue by putting them in the special needs category. I mentioned that earlier. And this allows us to consider opportunity zone applications regardless of the specific level of economic distress we also require. And also last year, EDA added opportunity zones as an investment priority, which further prioritizes them as an area of focus for grant making. So these two policy changes, which we made per the council, mean that if you're a project in or near an opportunity zone, if you apply for EDA funding, we're automatically going to consider it. Now, it doesn't mean we're automatically going to fund it because there are other criteria that come into play, but because of these policy changes, we're going to consider it for sure. Additionally, EDA has incorporated opportunity zones into our comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS. Many of you are aware of those, the content guidelines, and we did that last year as well. And this is to assist local and regional planning organizations and partners to build an effective approach to maximize the benefit of opportunity zones. And we've gone further. We encourage you to explore the USA Opportunity Zones tool that was developed by Indiana University and its Kelley School of Business under an EDA Research and National Technical Assistance Grant. And that website is statsamerica.org/opportunity. Go in there, find your community, and there's all kinds of good information in there to help you in this space. Before I conclude, I'm sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. Before I conclude, I'd also like to mention that Congress provided EDA special hiring authority under the CARES Act. It was a very tight bill when it came to EDA, and the special hiring authority recognized the fact that $1.5 billion requires more staff to effectively and efficiently manage and promote and do all that we need to with our CARES Act funding. So we're seeking job applicants for about 80 positions, and we're getting close to hiring a lot of those folks already for work in our headquarters office or our regional offices. And we're bringing those folks on board the best we can and as fast as we can. And we're committed to maintaining and hopefully even building to those high level of customer services that you all have come to expect from EDA. And we're hiring them, it seems a little wonky, but I'll say it anyways, under as Schedule A employees into the accepted service for a period not to exceed 2 years. So if you know anybody that would like to join our team, I'm going to give you the website here in a second. But we really encourage you to reach out to your network, see what jobs are still available, and if they're encouraged or interested to certainly apply. Next slide, which I believe is the last slide for me. Yes, thank you. Oh, so to wrap up my presentation, my part of it, please go to grants.gov. That's where you'll find our Notice of Funding Opportunity, the ED 900. It's an application to fill out. Before you do that, you may want to also visit eda.gov/coronavirus. This has all of our information about our funding, who is eligible. Again, you'll find the information I already mentioned, what type of grants we make, and so much information, frequently asked questions. We're updating that weekly with new information. And also, and that was on the screen earlier, forgive me for not calling that out, for the positions, it's eda.gov/careers. Again, check that out, and we appreciate your sharing that with as many folks as you like. So that concludes my part of the presentation, the overview of CARES Act, and it's a pleasure to turn it over now to Linda Cruz-Carnall. She's the director of our regional office in Philadelphia, and she's going to give you a perspective from the region, and then she, Dennis, myself, and Doug will be happy to answer any questions you have. So, Linda, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Joel. Thank you, Dennis. It's my pleasure to be here with you today with Deputy Secretary Dennis Alvord to discuss EDA's regional work. Just to backtrack, EDA's mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. Now, EDA's investment policy is designed to establish a foundation for sustainable job growth and the building of durable regional economies throughout the United States. This foundation builds upon two key economic drivers, one being innovation, which is a key to global competitiveness, new and better jobs, a resilient economy, and the attainment of national economic goals. And the second is regional collaboration, which we know is essential for economic recovery because regions are the centers of competition in the new global economy, and those that work together to leverage resources and use their strengths to overcome weaknesses will fare better than those that do not. So EDA encourages its partners around the country to develop initiatives that advance new ideas and creative approaches to address rapidly evolving economic conditions. And of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic and our pandemic recovery efforts, we certainly are poised to work very closely with our existing partners throughout the Northeast region. My office is one of 6 regional offices. As noted earlier, we cover Maine through the Virginias, including Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia. There are 27 economic development professionals, including myself, who work very closely hand in hand with regions, meeting communities and regions where they are to look at their strengths and weaknesses and develop strategies for job growth and economic prosperity in the future. A little bit about the Northeast region. The population is approximately 77.5 million, which is 24% of the national population. In terms of states, as I said, there are 13, plus the 3, the district and 2 territories. We have 397 counties throughout our region and 6,994 municipalities. The GDP is approximately $5 trillion, so it's representing 26% of the national GDP, with Puerto Rico at approximately 104 billion and USVI at 3.88. In terms of qualified opportunity zones, there are 2,645, which are 30% of the national designations. In fiscal year 19, we approved 39 grants assisting opportunity zones at a value of approximately 96 million. In terms of the management team, it's myself, there's a regional council. Currently, that position is currently held by Andrew Fittis. We have an economic development integrator, Matthew Solchadowski, who helps us to reach out across the federal family and also at state and local levels to ensure that we are leveraging and optimizing our work and bridging any silos that may have heretofore existed. The team composition is one of an investment development team, which works pre-approval with potential applicants and recipients. On a state basis, there's an economic development representative assigned to each state. Some work in the field and others out in the office. Maryland is represented by economic development specialist Alma Plummer. Many folks on the line may work closely with her. Alma's been very integrated with the Maryland stakeholder team for a number of years, and she's very much up to speed on the mainland and also the Eastern Shore economies and their needs. There's also a strategic implementation team, which works closely with our award recipients post-award to ensure that they're implemented in a timely fashion in accordance with our federal regulations and agency cross-cutting regulations such as procurement on construction projects and the like. We also have a disaster supplemental team and an administrative team. In addition, as Joel indicated, the regional office and my counterpart offices and directors are staffing up now with a team of qualified new professionals who are strictly going to be working closely with pandemic recovery applicants and awardees to respond to their needs, to develop projects, and once funded, to ensure that they're implemented in a timely fashion and rapidly and in compliance with not only federal requirements, but also recognize that there may be changing needs on the ground. And it is always EDA's objective to ensure that we're extremely responsive and working with our applicants in real time to address needs as they may change and evolve. In terms of the existing client base, the Philadelphia office has 146 of the revolving loan funds that Joel referred to earlier. We have 67 economic development districts. We also have a strong network of 12 university center partners. We have 3 trade adjustment assistance centers and 3 federally recognized tribal nation economic development districts. The regions are sort of divided into 4 sub-regions, one being Northern New England, in which we collaborate with the Northern Border Regional Commission. We work with the Mid-Atlantic states, of course, the Boston, Washington corridor, numerous metro and micropolitan areas, rural to the exurbs, Appalachia, including our AC Assistance to Coal community, stakeholders, and the Appalachian Regional Commission, and of course the Caribbean stakeholders with whom we continue to collaborate on Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Irma, and also earthquake responses as they unfold. In terms of applications in Maryland, this year we are working with Ellicott City, the Institute for Sustainable Development, on a series of Maryland resilience workshops. So we're excited about that particular partnership. And as many may know, and I think Joel referred to as well, we were recently in the town of Easton for a wonderful groundbreaking ceremony of the Mistletoe Industrial Park development, which was a collaboration with Talbot County and also our Economic Development District Midshore Regional Planning Council. We have the one-stop shop implemented by Tri-County of Eastern Maryland, down on the Eastern Shore. And we continue to work closely and collaborate with many of our partners in the Baltimore metro area on various undertakings there as well. My primary purpose here today is to assist with question and answer. So I will stop my presentation there and participate as we later in the presentation on Q&A. So it's my pleasure giving a little summary of our regional office. We're always available for outreach. Don't hesitate to contact us. Just shoot me an email. Thanks. I'll turn it over to Doug.
Pardon me, and thank you very much, Linda. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, joining Dennis, Joel, and yourself. My name is Doug Lynott. I'm the Director of Economic Development Integration and Disaster Recovery at EDA. And I'd like to just spend a few moments providing you with some information about what our practice has been established to accomplish and the type of work that our team does to make this vision come to life in the communities and regions that EDA serves. So in addition to its competitive grant programs, EDA also serves as the lead integrator of economic development resources, both federal and non-federal, public, private, and philanthropic. EDA's integration team is established to provide an enhanced level of service to the communities and regions EDA serves by striving to meet the following objectives. 1, to support and facilitate increased access to federal and other economic development resources and assistance on behalf of communities and applicants. 2, to enhance collaboration among federal agencies and between federal agencies and local and regional stakeholders. And 3, to reduce administrative burdens experienced by federal program applicants by working with our interagency partners to help applicants navigate different requirements and to maximize resources for economic development. EDA's integration function is implemented through a small team at headquarters and through one economic development integrator that is staffed in each of EDA's 6 regional offices. Matthew Suchodolski is the integrator for the Philadelphia region, and whom Linda made reference to moments ago. The regional integrators work in tandem with their economic development representative colleagues to identify and leverage opportunities for enhanced project support through federal and other program resources, public and private as well. Given the conditions facing our country right now under this pandemic, I'd also like to briefly share some information about the role our division serves administering EDA's responsibilities on behalf of the Department of Commerce and through the Economic Recovery Support Function, or ERSF. The ERSF role is part of the broader federal framework administered by FEMA, the National Disaster Recovery Framework. The ERSF role falls under this framework, and it is one wherein EDA works closely with FEMA and other federal agencies to support state and local communities with long-term economic recovery and resilience strategies and projects. EDA's regional economic development integrators are currently engaged with FEMA regional offices to support interagency economic recovery efforts in a number of states across the country. And in the meantime, our regional integrators continue to do their steady state work in integration as well as disaster recovery efforts. More information about the Division of Economic Development Integration and Disaster Recovery is available on the EDA website at www.eda.gov/EDI and includes contact information for individual members of our team, both at headquarters and in the regions, as well as information about other program coordination and integration tools and methods. So speaking of those tools and methods, you may be asking, what does integration assistance look like in practice? The EDI team has developed some core methods that are designed to meet local and regional organizations where they are in terms of their level of knowledge and capacity to work with and across multiple federal programs that can help advance their strategies and vision for economic growth and diversification. So we'll start at the basic level of capacity and knowledge, where one of the ways that we can provide assistance is simply through referrals. So our team works in cooperation with economic development representatives at the regional office to both receive referrals from other federal agencies whose resources may not be a good fit for projects that have been submitted, but for which EDA funds may be a good fit. And likewise, our regional integrators can help identify other federal agencies that EDA project submissions may find a better fit for elsewhere. There are a handful of integration events that our team is also helping to promote and facilitate in all of EDA's regions. The first such integration event is one that we call a Federal Interagency Resource Exchange, or FIRE. And through these events, EDA regional integrators, regional economic development representatives work with local governments, regional stakeholders to convene interagency partners and program representatives for an exchange of information at that level. So it's really, as the name suggests, it is about the exchange of information at an intergovernmental level. It's also about relationship building so that our local and regional partners begin to form relationships with the individual program representatives at various federal, state, and regional offices, and become more familiar with what the different federal resources can help them accomplish with respect to a variety of economic and community development projects. And then finally, another regional integration event that we're also promoting and facilitating is something that we are calling Regional Economic Diversification Summits, or REDS, which are specifically facilitated to help promote and facilitate the implementation of critical top priority economic diversification and community development projects that have been identified by local and regional stakeholders under the SEDS process. Additional information about the REDS process is available on the EDA website at www.eda.gov/EDI/REDS. That is a very brief and concise overview of how EDA's integration function enhances the total level of service that EDA can provide to communities and regions across the country and support your ability to leverage multiple types of resources to support the projects that can ensure strong economic recovery. That's the conclusion of my official presentation. And as Linda indicated, I'll also be available for questions. But for now, I'd like to just turn this back to the host for any final concluding remarks.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who's on today. We sent this out with fairly late notice because we did want to make this information available through our Smart Growth Network platform in working with our EPA partners. So thanks to all the panelists here today. We do have a number of questions. You can continue to ask questions through the questions tab, and I will present them to the speakers today. And then I want to just make sure that everybody is unmuted, and including Joel, if you muted yourself. Want to make sure that everybody's available to answer questions. And then we'll just go ahead and ask questions until we run out, and then we'll go ahead and end the session today. Real quick question here, I guess, from Ty Warner, who's in the audience. Can you repeat what the FIRE acronym stands for? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Well, that's a Doug question, but
Doug,
I'll be
go
happy to answer. Federal Interagency Resource Exchange. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. Excellent. Here's another question. Is this funding focused on rural or coal communities, or is it available for urban projects as well?
If you're referring to our CARES Act funding, everything, any community that can establish that eligibility via the list I shared, and also the project and the application states how you will prevent, prepare, or respond to the pandemic, as well as the economic injury that's been caused. And we also have Assistance to Coal Community program and funding for that. And maybe Linda can shed some more light on that, since Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and a few other states are in her region.
Linda, did you want to add to that?
Nothing additional to add. Joe covered it very well.
Okay. Excellent. I guess another question that's kind of a definitional one. What is a district organization?
That's an economic development district. There's we have a series of designated economic development districts throughout the nation. As I indicated, the Philadelphia office has 67 of them. Their primary responsibility is to engage in continuous economic development planning. The ultimate outcome of EDD's work is a document known as the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which is the planning document at the designated region, which often is made up of a series of counties, or it could even include counties and towns. That's the document that they use to direct their economic development activities over a 5-year period. EDA asks for annual updates, but generally the SEDS is the strategy is completely revised every 5 years. Our economic development districts tend to work very closely with regions, states, and localities. Typically, the EDDs form a network at the state level and collaborate with State Department of Economic Development, state departments of economic development, and through that they coordinate their efforts on particular areas of interest, say for example broadband, particularly as it relates to rural communities, or in Appalachia coal responses, or whatever the case may be. Generally the SEDS starts with a SWOT analysis of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of any particular of the defined region. And then it looks forward as to how the region could respond to those particular strengths and weaknesses. I think that pretty much covers it. In terms of project development, it's not uncommon for our EDDs also to assist with applicants to develop projects, or assist applicants who are unfamiliar with EDA to administer their projects for applicants who may be unfamiliar. So the Economic Development District is a network on which EDA relies very heavily. It is a network that is ready, willing, and able to be extremely helpful and responsive whenever there is a natural disaster, or in this case, an economic disaster. Our districts are the very first tool that and communication tool that we use at EDA to conduct our outreach. We typically would contact the districts in response to an emergency in very short order to assess where folks are and how we can help connect with emergency partners and be ready to deploy when we turn to face whatever the economic recovery needs and efforts are going to be. So it's a unique relationship. This is a very unique tool, one that no other federal agency can bring to bear. And I mean, of course, collaboratively they can, but EDA maintains the relationship. So it is really one that we value tremendously, and one that through which we've achieved very great outcomes historically. We'll stop there.
Okay, thanks, Linda. And I'll just pose the question to the panelists, and those who want to answer can do so. And if you wanted to add to that as well, let me know. Next question here is, if we have 11 counties in our region, do we average or aggregate economic distress criteria or not?
Yeah, I would defer. Yeah, sure. Actually, I would defer to the state, the economic development specialist. They're really on the front lines, best poised to help any potential applicants and come up with the appropriate distress criteria to help double check the information that's available and and really to serve as a somewhat of an advocate for the community in that respect, to help our stakeholders to glean the best data to put their best foot forward in terms of what the data sets show. I came up through the legal side of things and sort of stayed out of fact finding. And in my experience, fact finding is best at the economic development specialist desk when it comes to the distress criteria. And I will also note that the economic development integrator, Matt Schultz-Chodowski, is very poised to assist in that regard as well. So we have a strong team that's available to us in our regional office and in every regional office that is available to help our applicants to identify the proper data sets to put their application in the best light for consideration by our competitive selection committee. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Next question here is, do you have some examples of COVID-19 funded projects that you would or could highlight to illustrate the types of projects that EDA has funded?
Absolutely, and I'll direct whoever asked that question to our website. The grants that EDA has made already are CARES Act Recovery Assistance grants. We have those in press releases on our website, and we'll post all of those there. So if you go to eda.gov and find the newsroom up on the top there, you'll find them. And what we are doing right now, Linda mentioned our economic development districts. We have invited them to apply for our CARES Act funding. They are the eyes, ears, and so much more on the ground when it comes to economic development. So we've asked them to apply for funds if they'd like, and most of them have, to assess that economic damage in the community. And as Linda said, and I shared, and Doug shared, all that's linked together with the comprehensive economic development strategies and more. So the economic development districts are really the heartbeat of economic development work that goes on and that EDA does. So if you go on to our website, you'll see some of those grants that were made. We also made a round of grants to tribal groups. And if I don't think, Linda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there are any in Maryland that we support. But anyway, we made grants to tribal groups as well. We'll soon start coming out with our revolving loan fund grants, and you can see those on our website, university centers, and all of our competitive grants that we will make. So our website's the best place for all of that information, and you can go there right now to see what some of those EDDs are specifically doing across the country.
Okay.
Yes, I can piggyback on Joel's comments. We have 3 economic development districts on the Eastern Shore: Tri-County Council of Eastern Maryland and Tri-County Council of Western Maryland and Mid-Shore Regional Development Council. So there's 3 that we collaborate with. And I will also note that as a result of our economic development integration practice led by Doug Lynott and also Matt Schultz-Chodowski, as well as Alma Plummer. In the Baltimore region, our office was working very closely on a collaborative HUD and EDD, HUD strategy and SED strategy. It was in a pilot endeavor. So the city of Baltimore does have a plan, an acceptable plan that we utilize and have utilized in the past in making funding efforts there. We also have the university centers on which we rely. So there's plenty of resources available and lots of help, both internal within the regional office and also externally through the district partners.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, are there any limitations on operating or non-capital funding related to the coronavirus financial assistance?
Relative to public works projects or revolving loan funds projects? Or, I'm sorry, or, yes, or revolving loan fund projects. Could you clarify the question?
I'm not sure that they specified one or the other, so if it doesn't apply, or if some way to answer that question.
Oh, I will say that relative to revolving loan funds, there is authority to provide operational expenses. And EDA is happy to consider requests for operating funding. In terms of public works, generally, we do not fund operational costs. That would typically be the responsibility of the recipient on a construction project, facility operation cost. With respect to workforce development projects, which we would typically fund under our economic adjustment program, there may be operations that come into play. For example, in a training center, wherein we would be training potential workers for that region needs within a certain time frame pursuant to the scope of work. And there may be certain operational expenses to launch and to implement that training effort. So it depends very much upon the approved scope of work of the EDA project and whether or not operations relate to EDA's, the purpose and scope of the grant award. So in terms of teeing up an application there, again, I would strongly urge any potential applicant to work very closely with the EDR or EDS for the state to discuss the potential eligibility of operational costs. We're always very flexible to consider those sorts of potential options in any budget that may be come into us under with an application. And we want to work with our applicants as we always do. So let's talk. I'll turn it back.
This is Dennis. I would just piggyback perhaps one other area where operational costs might come to play, and that is in terms of our planning and technical assistance awards. So quite often we will be providing a grant to allow one of our economic development districts or a nonprofit organization or a university or other organization to undertake either an analytic study, a planning study, comprehensive economic development strategy, or we frequently, in cases such as the pandemic or natural disasters, will support disaster recovery coordinators who essentially are staff augmentation that will help to support the coordination of recovery strategies and the implementation of those strategies within an impacted region. So there are some kind of operational outlays that occur there as well.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. And thanks to everybody who's submitting questions. We've gotten a number of them through the question and answer session, so we have several more for you all. Next one is, it was mentioned that $13 million of EDA CARES Act funding was awarded last week. Can you provide some examples of the types of projects that have been funded?
Certainly. Those grants primarily went to our economic development districts, as I mentioned, and to tribal grantees. And again, the economic development district and the tribal grantees are using those funds. Some are hiring disaster recovery specialists. Some are hiring consultants. Some already have folks on staff, and they are conducting those assessments to assess the economic damage that's been done by the pandemic in their districts, in their regions, and they are mapping a way forward. So primarily, though, that's what the majority of those funds have gone to. It's those assessments to say, hey, this is how it's impacted our industry, whatever that may be, in the economic development district, and they're going to start to work out those plans to see how they can best recover from the pandemic.
This is Dennis. Maybe I could just piggyback on Joel's comment as well, because this is a question that we get quite often on webinars about our CARES Act assistance, just in terms of what types of projects and activities are eligible and would be good candidates. And Joel's absolutely correct. You can certainly look on EDA's website and see the CARES Act awards that we've already made. We are early in this process, and it may be equally useful for you to look at the EDA website at some of the types of projects that EDA has funded in the past, both as part of our regular program activities as well as part of our natural disaster recovery activities, because that may generate a wealth of ideas in terms of the types of projects that EDA would potentially entertain. And those range along a broad continuum of projects, everything from planning and technical assistance studies on the front end to the capitalization of locally and regionally administered revolving loan fund to increase capital liquidity and access to capital for businesses, to a wide range of different types of infrastructure construction projects that will support growth and development of the regional economy. Those could be foundational infrastructure construction projects, such as core public works types facilities, water and sewer related activities, access roads, rail spurs, brick and mortar for business development centers or business incubators and accelerators, and port facilities. Really, we're really very fortunate in that we have a very flexible authorizing statute and can support such a wide range of different types of economic development activities. The key thing to keep in mind with the CARES Act is that you have to make that connection back to how the particular activity is helping to prevent, prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus or the economic impacts resulting from the coronavirus. So hopefully that provides some color. There are a number of case studies, success stories that are on EDA's website that will provide a range of ideas. You can also look at our past annual reports to see the types of projects that EDA has funded. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in the months ahead, we will also be having a challenge competition to support innovation and entrepreneurship type activities that are similar to one of EDA's other core program functions, which is our regional innovation strategies, now build to scale type program. So be on the lookout for that future notice of funding opportunity, and that may be a fit for some of your economic development needs as well.
Great, thanks, Dennis.
Michael, if I could share one thing to what Dennis just said, is that the CARES Act did not alter in any way EDA's goals or mission. And if folks on the line know it, great. And those that don't, that is to drive economic development and invest in economic development projects in distressed communities or communities recovering from natural disasters, as Linda mentioned. So it didn't alter our goals or mission at all. It said just do more of what you do well and get those funds into those communities that have been impacted by the pandemic. So just wanted to add that exclamation point to what Dennis said.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Here's a question that we've gotten in a couple different ways, but I'll ask this one. Curious as to hear how EDA is coordinating with other federal agencies regarding the CARES Act.
Well, this is Doug Lynott. I can provide some information about that. As I mentioned during my presentation, the Integration Division oversees EDA's roles and responsibilities under the Economic Recovery Support Function, And in this role, our team is in regular discussions with FEMA personnel in the Recovery Support Function Leadership Group at FEMA headquarters, and participating in meetings that are convened by the 10 individual FEMA regional offices. This is to help EDA understand what the critical issues and impacts are at a state and regional office level, and to have a forum for direct information sharing among federal interagency partners. In addition, as a part of this overall effort, the EDA integration headquarters team convenes an ERSF working group to include its primary partners under the Economic Recovery Support Function, but we are also expanding membership to include non-ERSF agencies that have complementary resources under the CARES Act. And so our team is playing a critical role in finding and distributing information about our resources, our priorities, and the awards we're making on an ongoing coordinated basis.
Okay. Thank you very much. Because most CEDSs will not reflect the region or community's current economic situation due to COVID-19, are there any, do you have any suggestions about where to find more current or relevant economic information to indicate the impact of COVID on a community? I don't know who wants to answer that one.
Yeah, this is Linda. I would, I think that it's interesting in that we are dealing with an economic recovery effort that is very closely tied to the actual event, and for this reason, under the eligibility has been set up so that basically most of the country is eligible for pandemic recovery CARES assistance. So we will once again work very closely with applicants to look at emerging information to help them craft their potential justification and develop an idea that may be responsive. But we recognize that Stats America, which we typically use for to gather data, will be somewhat behind the curve. Here's where, once again, communication with economic development districts, state and local stakeholders who can speak to the economic conditions on the ground and frame those in a way that helps EDA in considering a potential CARES application, I think is really the key. And again, engaging in a continuous dialogue with the professionals that we have to work with communities on developing projects, on teeing up applications for consideration for funding. I would also note that the economic development integrator is also a key professional that we can bring to bear. Longtime practitioners at EDA often say that that some projects are terrific projects, but many are suited for EDA, but sometimes they also are suited for other federal agencies. And it's for that reason that we have the economic development integrator function to help us to help applicants to break through silos. And it's also not uncommon for us in certain instances to partner with federal agencies to develop a memorandum of understanding for a particular project that if conditions are appropriate, enables us to collaborate. EDA has discretionary authority, and as I said earlier, we work very closely with applicants, and we pride ourselves on helping communities to come up with responses to address their economic conditions, create jobs, and in this case, pivot to economic recovery in response to COVID-19.
A few examples that I'd like to add to Linda's excellent explanation is I know that there was an application that said before the pandemic, our state had X amount of unemployment benefits applications. After the pandemic, this was the number. And our project is going to work on workforce development, and that's, a major statistic. If you're a city or a county, perhaps you are on the Maryland shore, and tourism was a major income generator for you, your business, your community, and that has been impacted by the pandemic in this way, and that so you expected to have X millions of dollars in taxes that you thought were going to be paid, and now you don't have that income. So it's thinking creatively like that, but there are a lot of statistics out there, the impact that the pandemic has had, and the more that you can include those, the more economic impact that you can show makes your application much more competitive for EDA funds.
Okay, thank you. Along the same lines, we have a question here, I guess, about how the decisions are made. Let me go back here. What are the specific criteria for project selection? And are projects selected by a national selection committee or at a more local level?
I think Linda's best positioned to answer that one.
Yes, each regional office convenes an investment review committee to execute EDA's competitive discretionary selection process. They typically meet monthly, and it's comprised of a group of both regional office and headquarters staff members who review the projects thoroughly ahead of time and basically rate and score them. So it is, in fact, a competitive selection process that is held on a rolling, regular basis in all of the offices until throughout the fiscal year. We like to spread out our funding decisions throughout the year, so we are constantly working with applicants to develop a healthy pipeline and portfolio of projects. We will continue to do that all the way through this fiscal year, which closes September 30th. And then we will just turn over the calendar and begin FY 2021. I think many folks are looking forward to 2021. I know I am, and I will take that October 1st early start. And we will basically carry forward any projects that are that have been screened and that have passed through the preliminary investment priority tests that are set forth in the NOFO. Let me see if I can get some of that here ready for you. Well, the NOFO, the investment priorities can be found on EDA's website, so I would direct folks to www.eda.gov, and then the About page includes the investment priorities. We work very closely with applicants again to tee up responsive applications, and we try to give direction, early direction in terms of those that may need to be bolstered in terms of the justification, or assist applicants to perhaps think about gathering additional data, looking for additional data, or even working with other partners. I hope that helps.
I think so, Linda. Thank you. We've gotten a couple questions, and I understand this can be a very detailed one, but perhaps you could outline, as someone said, addressing the nuts and bolts of submitting an application, including the local match requirements and submission deadlines.
So I can take a crack at that, and if I don't get everything, I'm sure my colleagues will jump in. So EDA accepts applications on a rolling basis, very similar to college admissions. We continue to accept applications as long as we have funding available. And we will evaluate those applications in tranches through the investment review committees that Linda mentioned earlier that occur at each of our regional offices. So there is no deadline per se to apply for EDA, although even with $1.5 billion, it's worth noting that given the enormous scale of the economic impacts of the pandemic, we do expect to be oversubscribed with applications many times over. So I would encourage interested applicants to get in touch with their economic development representatives early to begin that process and get your applications in as soon as possible. In terms of the matching requirement, we were fortunate that Congress provided EDA with the authority to provide grants up to 100%. So we have flexibility that goes beyond our regular program authority. In the case of the CARES Act, under regular program, we can typically only go up to an 80% grant rate based on the level of economic distress. For the CARES Act, we expect to do all of our grant making, or the vast majority of our grant making, probably between 80 and 100% based on the exigent economic circumstances. And again, your local EDA staff will be able to best guide you through that process. We recognize that grantees will be have different abilities in terms of their ability to produce match and come up with match at this time. So we'll be assessing every application based on the individual circumstances.
Michael, this is Linda. I can jump back in again. The investment priorities I mentioned earlier on the website just quickly are first, recovery and resilience, which are projects that assist with economic resilience, including business continuity and preparedness, and long-term recovery from natural disasters and economic shocks to ensure U.S. communities are globally competitive. The second investment priority is critical infrastructure, projects that establish the fundamental building blocks of a prosperous and innovation-centric economy and a secure platform for American business, including physical, such as broadband, energy, roads, water and sewer, and other economic infrastructure. Third is workforce development, excuse me. And hold on a minute, I'm sorry. Having a technical glitch here. There we go. Projects that support the workforce development and manufacturing are projects that support the planning and implementation of infrastructure for skills training centers and related facilities that address the hiring needs of the business community, particularly in the manufacturing sector, with a specific emphasis on the expansion of apprenticeships and work and learn training models. It also includes projects that encourage job creation and business expansion in manufacturing, including infrastructure-related efforts that focus on advanced manufacturing of innovative, high-value products and enhancing manufacturing supply chain. The fourth investment priority is exports and foreign direct investment, which are primarily infrastructure projects that enhance community assets such as ports, port facilities to support growth in the United States exports, and increased foreign direct investment, and ultimately the return of jobs to the United States. The fifth investment priority is opportunity zones, which I referred to briefly. Planning and implementation projects aimed at attracting private investment, including from opportunity funds, to grow businesses and create jobs in census tracts that have been designated as opportunity zones. This includes targeted projects located within an opportunity zone, projects that, while not located within an opportunity zone, have a clear intent of benefiting nearby opportunity zones, and regional projects that encompass an area containing at least one opportunity zone with a clear intent of benefiting that opportunity zone. And those, of course, have been designated to spur economic development by providing tax benefits to investors. That's the sum of the five.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Based on what we were just talking about, someone asks, how likely is it that we can get 100% funding?
From a regional office perspective, that's really tough to say. We are directing our applicants knowing that match funding is scarce and that everyone is really feeling a bit of a financial pinch at this time. We just are encouraging applicants to work through the application and tee up the best justification that they possibly can. There is generally the general principle that we tend to apply, I will say, is that applications with some skin in the game, so to speak, tend to be more successful. That's something that we know from our experience as economic development professionals. That said, my staff and the staff in all offices are very capable and able to help folks develop their budgets. We can look at the possibility of in-kind match, particularly on capacity building projects, wherein staff time can be utilized and credited towards match. So we're able to be creative. Sometimes land value can be utilized as well. It depends on the project. But there is, pursuant to CARES, certainly waiver authority, and that's something that we are ready, willing, and able to consider and work with our stakeholders to develop a potential justification. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Linda. Is there non-competitive funding available?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, in the Philadelphia regional office, we expect to have approximately, it's a little early to tell, but at least $50 million available for competitive funding. And EDRs are actively, and economic development specialists are actively working with our stakeholders to develop those. So I encourage anyone on the call today to reach out to me at lcruz-carnall@eda.gov, and I can easily refer you to the state point of contact if you're interested in applying. We expect to hold investment review committee meetings later this summer, mid to late summer, to consider CARES applications as well as the others in our portfolio. So I encourage anyone to develop an application for submission.
Okay.
It may be worth just clarifying that for the non-competitive awards, those organizations have already been invited to submit an application up to a certain amount, and we're working through that process with those existing organizations now. These are kind of long-standing economic development partners in an attempt to be as impactful as possible, as quickly as possible with the funds that we'll be working with. And I think, as were mentioned earlier in the presentation, providing a series of non-competitive awards to economic development districts, university centers, and tribal planning grantees, as well as our network of revolving loan fund grantees, to try to get these CARES Act funds out into the communities and working to assist with the recovery as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay, a couple more questions before we wrap up here. Is it recommended or allowed that we reach out to a regional CARES office before submitting a grant request to ensure eligibility, brainstorm success strategies, and so on?
Yes, exclamation point.
Okay.
If you don't know who your contacts are, you can find those contacts on EDA's website under eda.gov. I believe it's /contacts, but from the homepage at eda.gov, there's a contacts page. You can identify your regional office, and if you click on the plus sign, it will cascade down a list of your state-based economic development representative. That's a great place to start working with EDA.
Great, thanks, Dennis. If we are hoping to generate jobs and retain jobs through our project, is there a per job estimated cost for generated versus retained job, or any other benchmarks for us to use?
We do not
So
use.
there's really.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I'll defer to you.
Very good. No, well, I think we were about to say the same thing. There's really not a benchmark per se. We evaluate each project individually based on the merits of the project, and we understand that each is unique, and you have different underlying economic conditions that you're trying to address. You may be dealing with some areas that have acute levels of long-standing distress. Some areas may have, had some type of sudden and severe dislocation. The types of jobs that are created under different types of economic development projects are different. So there's not any type of standard per se. What we're looking for is a good, strong economic development return. And something that is going to help the economy in your region, in your community, to rebound and be successful over the long term. And generally that means we want to raise the economic bar. So kind of increase above whatever the prevailing rates may have been. But that may vary significantly from different parts of the country, or even within a region. A rural area may differ, for example, from an urban area. So no standard per se.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. I guess this will be our last question for today, and thanks to everybody who submitted them. Various resources, including BLS and the University of Illinois, have developed lists of most exposed sectors. Does EDA have a list of NAICS codes to define industries that have been most impacted by COVID-19?
We don't have a list, but we are certainly very cognizant of a wide variety of studies that have been done and are being done to look at the impacts. And that is the type of information that I think would be very compelling for you to bring forward as part of your application. As both Joel and Linda mentioned, we've seen widely disparate impacts as a result of the pandemic. As a matter of policy, we have made all pandemic impacted areas eligible to apply for EDA assistance, but we recognize that some areas have been disproportionately impacted. Those may be areas for which the underlying fundamentals of the economy were already not good. They were already struggling even pre-pandemic and had high levels of economic distress. Or they may be areas of the country that were particularly reliant upon industry sectors that were disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And we've mentioned some of those today, such as transportation or tourism, and a host of others. So there have been some very good studies that have been done both by the government and outside the government. And I would certainly encourage you to look at those, and as part of particularly making the case for your grant application.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Well, since we're almost at 2:30 Eastern here, I think we'll wrap up. Dennis, I don't know if you, on behalf of the panel, have any final thoughts that you'd like to share. I think we would like to make these slides available to our audience on the webinar archives page, but is there anything you wanted to close with today?
No, I would just really like to thank you for having us today. We really welcome the opportunity to share with you the work that we're doing to assist with economic recovery under the CARES Act. As I hope you've heard, we have a very flexible economic development program that can, I think, be very, very helpful to communities and regions as they're looking to rebuild their economy as a result of the pandemic. The first place to work with EDA is always to reach out to our economic development representatives. So I would encourage anyone that's interested in submitting an application to reach out and talk to them about your idea. They can guide you to connect to other complementary economic development partners within the regions, including our economic development districts and university center partners. And as I think was also mentioned on today's call, we have a variety of other resources that can also be helpful to you, such as our economic development integration practice, where we can help connect you to resources, even if those resources aren't at EDA, to help you achieve your long-term economic development goals. So I just wanted to say thanks very much again for hosting us, and we'll absolutely make the slides available. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us by email if we can answer additional questions as they arise.
Great, thank you very much. With that, we'll conclude our webinar today, CARES Act Recovery Assistance, an overview of Economic Development Administration aid programs. I'd like to offer a big thank you to our presenters today for a great presentation, to all of those of you who attended, and to John Coleman, our communications guru, who helps to make this all happen. The complete recording of today's webinar will be posted on smartgrowth.org in the coming days. Also, for those who have requested one, all attendees will receive an email that will contain a link to a personalized certificate of participation. Please look for this follow-up email. When you exit from today's webinar, you'll be asked to participate in a short evaluation. Please take a few moments to provide feedback so that we can continue to improve the webinar experience for you. And watch your email inbox and smartgrowth.org for details on future webinars, including a couple that we have on the screen that are coming up and will soon be available for registration. Have a great day.